back to You and I for the Kenai. I'm back with Koebryn today, and we're back at the Serenity Intake office recording some more recovery stories. Today we're sitting down with Clay, and Clay's going to tell us about his journey to recovery, man. So how's it going today, Clay?
Good.
Good.
Yeah. Things are really good.
Nice, man. So we'll just get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I was born and raised in Soldotna, Alaska. I grew up on a farm and had a pretty good childhood. Kind of grew up in a religious household. My dad was a pastor, and my mom a bit of a Bible thumper, so to speak, you know. This is the way I saw it back then.
Right.
Let's see.
How'd you feel about all that? Like, you kind of got a big smile on your face right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous right now.
Yeah.
I don't do things like this. So, and which is important for me today because, like, uncomfortability promotes growth in my life today. And so I'm thankful for this. See, how I felt about it, I was angry. I was a very angry kid.
Mm-hmm.
I rebelled constantly. I would always be disciplined, but I would walk away from getting spanked with a smile on my face and laughing because I thought if that's the worst they can do to me, then like, you know, I can do whatever I want, you know.
Right.
Like it was no big deal for me to get disciplined, and even getting grounded didn't work and stuff. And my parents they split up when I was 12 years old, and my mom took me and some of the kids in Missouri, and I was actually homeschooled all the way to 6th grade, and I started going to public school, and that was kind of like a culture shock right there, and I didn't really know how to fit in. I was kind of like quiet, but you know I wanted friends, of course, and connection, and the easiest way I found it was in you know the group of kids that were, you know, rebels, because I was a natural rebel since I was a little kid, and so started like chewing tobacco and stuff to fit in, and 6th grade graduation is when started drinking and smoking weed like a couple weeks later, and then pills came, and but in Missouri, living with my mom, I slowed down on that because I was going to a private school and I was playing basketball, and our basketball team was really good, and so that was fun. But I was still like a very like angry kid. I wasn't getting along with my mom because she would like whenever I was with my mom, I wanted to be with my dad. When I was with my dad, I wanted to be with my mom, and I was kind of torn between the two, and I didn't really know what I wanted, or I didn't know the feelings I was feeling. I didn't know how to talk about them. So, you know, I would just act out in anger, you know, anger towards my little brother, towards my mom, towards myself, threatening, you know, to commit suicide, and you know, my knives get taken away, and I get mad, and I was just a very unhappy kid.
Looking back now, why do you think you were so angry?
I think I didn't know what I was feeling. So it was a lot easier for me to turn it to anger, something I was familiar with since I was a little kid, rather than like being sad and you know, feeling pain, and you know, didn't really have anyone to talk to. Like, I went to counseling, but I learned how to juggle there. So, I mean, like, we didn't really talk about any of the stuff I was actually going through. I just pretended like it was all okay, and when it was too much, when it was all built up in my shoulders, I would just act out in anger.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this just sounds like a perfect storm, you know? You got all these elements kind of combined together. You've been homeschooled up until a certain point, and then basically your parents split up, and you move to a different state, and you go to a different school, basically all within the same time frame, right? So I would imagine, and I don't know if you felt this way, but I would imagine there'd kind of be this sense of unfairness of like so many things changing in such a short amount of time, and you're already kind of frustrated with, the authority structure. Is that kind of how you were feeling, or is it really hard to tell? I know it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I thought things were very unfair.
Mm.
But what I didn't realize is I was being unfair as well. Like, I mean, I was a kid, and I feel like that, like, my other siblings were kind of growing up faster, and I was still immature, and I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
So I mean, I actually went to a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, because, I mean, my mom didn't know what to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, because, I mean, I didn't know what to do. I don't think any parent would really know what to do with how angry of a kid I was. And, I was just trying to get my way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Even when you probably really don't know what your way even is, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Your way probably shifts moment to moment, like, depending on what you want in that moment, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said you went to counseling. Because a lot of the people we talk to, it's similar, you know what I mean? They have some stuff, like, that's unresolved from childhood. A lot of not knowing how you're feeling and how to deal with those feelings. And a lot of that, I mean, if you're not taught how to deal with your feelings, especially when you're young, like, it perpetuates, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to cope with things as you get older because you've never learned and no one's ever taught you how to cope anyway,
Right.
with little things, so it makes sense. Like, no, man, that's really hard. Then you had this big transition. We moved around a lot when we were kids, too. And that's always hard, man. Like, no matter what,
Yeah.
like, even if you're moving from a bad situation to a good one, like, not to say that you were, but just in general, you know what I mean? Anytime you're moving and changing things, especially when you're 12, dude, like, that's a hard age, man. Like, you've never been to public school. That is the absolute worst time to go to public school. That is terrible.
That's what I've heard.
Dude, middle schoolers are the worst. You know what I mean? Like, that's when kids are, like, starting to hit puberty. They're getting ready to change, dude. Like, they don't know. Like, the majority of kids, even in well-situated households, don't know what they're feeling and don't really know what's going on in life at that point either. You know what I mean? So, like, it's kind of just some things, man. Like, it all kind of just builds up right here. And that's kind of, it happens. But just looking back now, what do you think would have best helped you? You said you didn't have anybody to talk to. Like, what would that person have looked like to you, do you think, if you would have been able to have somebody to talk to? Like, if you could create them right now, like, what would that person look like?
They would be open about just things of the world, and, like, open to me about, like, what to expect, and have a peaceful presence, and to always be loving to everybody, and ask me if I am okay, and tell me how, things that they might have been dealing with, when they were younger, or things they're dealing with, currently.
Right.
Like, I feel like maybe I would have opened up some, but who knows,
Right. Yeah. No, I asked that question because, dude, there's a lot of kids like you. You know what I mean? That are just, like, they don't, especially when you're getting disciplined a lot. Not that, like, discipline's always a bad thing. You know what I mean? Some kids need to be disciplined, I suppose. But, like, the only thing you really learn when you're yelled at is how to yell at people. Like, that's really all you're learning there. You know what I mean? Like, you're really not, like, learning a whole much of a lesson. Like, it's actually, like, it's weird. But, like, in that, does that come out? Because your anger never goes away, right? Like, no matter how much you're disciplined, like, the anger doesn't really ever leave.
I feel like my journey, drugs helped me to cope with that for a very long time. It's just feeling numb.
Mm-hmm.
And today, like, I've never actually been a very angry person after, I would say, 18 years old. Like, I always, like, held it in, and it would build up and stuff. And by me using drugs, I was able to relieve that for so long. But I didn't know, when I got off the drugs, I still didn't know how to feel. And so I was uncomfortable, anxious. I couldn't sit still. Like I always had to be going somewhere. And that's why like I started traveling a lot. I was running from myself and running from God, and I didn't know what to do or how to express like how I felt. And I believe counseling, rehabs, and just meeting a lot of different people and having deep conversations and opening up, I started to realize that, what the feelings I was feeling were. And a lot of it wasn't even my own stuff. A lot of it was people around me. Like, I feel other people's feelings too, like around me. Like I could be having like anxiety right now, and it might not, be myself. Like I didn't know how to differentiate between what I was feeling myself and the other people around me. Because I believe that. I know that I pick up what other people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely not the first person I've heard say that you can literally be feeling maybe like super anxious, like you were talking about. Look around and you'll see someone who's super anxious, and all of a sudden they'll click, and you're like, why do I feel like that? Which is something that was kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around, because that's not really automatic for me, but I can understand. This is, like I said, I've heard before of different people who say that. So it's really interesting to hear that you were able to learn that and to start to understand that. And maybe that, it sounded like there was a lot of confusion, with emotions.
Yeah.
And that probably was a pretty good source of it. Not knowing how, if you're feeling something or if it's a reflection of someone else's feeling, imagine that was a lot of turmoil before you figure that out. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So what kind of brought you there? Like, what happened in your life? Was there kind of a dip into sort of a rock bottom scenario, or what made you more open or decide that there was a way you could kind of sort this out?
At first, it wasn't exactly a choice to want to like stop using drugs. I wanted to keep feeling numb for a very, very long time. After prison, I wanted to keep using, but I was on probation, and so I would try not to, and then I realized that I couldn't go very long without using. And then it's like, well, I need to complete probation, so I would try to stay clean, and I still couldn't stay clean. And that's when eventually I started going to rehabs, and it's when I started being introduced to the idea of like, okay, you have these feelings and you don't know how to feel them, and so you try to cover them up, and the feelings just weren't okay with me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so through like I've tried all the ways that were recommended, and what they taught me in rehabs and stuff, and it never worked for me. Like I would even go back to religion, but the problem is I was going back to religion. I wasn't going back to a personal relationship with God. Like I was going off of what other people were telling me, and it's like, well, I don't quite understand. But you see, it's not about religion at all. It's not about like, you have to do this or that. It's about like having that personal relationship with God and having that connection, and then you can start correcting the other things in your life.
So that's really where you had to start, more or less. So was there a point, you said that you tried and it just wasn't working, so then you went to rehab. Was there a point where you started realizing that you couldn't do this alone? Like, I'm assuming there was a point in your life where like, you know what, I could stop whenever I want to, I just don't want to. Like, that's a pretty common thing we hear. I've been there. So when did that kind of transition into, wait a minute, maybe I can't stop? What was that experience like?
Goodness, I wanted to keep using till I'm 27 years old now, and I wanted to keep using. Like I would tell myself like I'll just quit for a while and then go back to it, or I'll quit, but I still want to drink You know, I get drunk and then I'm looking for a gram of heroin, and it never was enough, and that's when I started to realize, like, I can't do anything, like I can't do any mind altering substances, because once I stopped, like, dealing with how I feel and putting things in my life to cover up excuse me, to cover up how I feel, it's like it's a snowball avalanche effect, you know. Yeah, it keeps going, and there's not really any stopping me until, you know, jails, prisons. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been arrested. I don't actually know, but I know that each and every time, just about each and every time, has saved my life. Like, I would have died if I wasn't getting locked up. Like, I would have died if the times I didn't go to rehab. Like, I got so tired of fighting that fight of wanting to be clean, wanting to live free, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it by myself, you know? I couldn't. I didn't know how, and I was constantly running, constantly moving state to state, and I just couldn't find that peace within myself, that connection through other people. You know, we're made for connection, you know, we're made for love, to love each other. And I couldn't find it.
So just kind of a gnawing feeling that built up. Like, you were looking for this. It's almost like you were looking for a relationship in your addiction, but it wasn't satisfying because it's just numbing. You know, it doesn't have the complete package of love and support of a real, genuine human connection. So it sounds like that you started to discover that that's what you needed. Is there anyone in your life who kind of pointed you towards that, or did you see recovery and see it on your own and think, this is somewhere where I could find this connection that I'm looking for?
A lot of people were trying to point me in the right direction. Like, everywhere I went, someone was telling me, like, about God. Like, even at my worst times, people were praying for me. My family was praying for me, and people were reaching out to me, telling me, you know, at any time, you know, you can call upon Jesus and you can be forgiven. And I wasn't having it. Like, I started having other beliefs and dabbling into other religions, and just put me into a darker spot. I was lost. Like, I was numb. And I thought I could be a god. I thought I could create my own reality. I thought, you know, since I can speak life, I can speak death, that I made myself, or I tried to make myself a god, and it wasn't working. It didn't work for a bit.
Yeah, I think that maybe there was that contrast of realizing that you could not overcome this struggle alone, and so therefore, you know, it couldn't be possible that you were God, because you wouldn't have any limits. So maybe that was that something that you kind of repeatedly hit against, was that if I can't beat this, then there must be something different. I'm just not enough in this situation. Did that kind of hit you at some point?
Yes. I got out of prison in Nevada, and I got back in the drugs pretty quick, and shooting up meth and heroin, and I went to rehab a few times there in Vegas because I was on parole, and they were like, "Oh, you got to rehab." Put me on Subutex. I was on
Like
Subutex for 6 months.
Rehab?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
parole. Like, they had this program where it was called medically assisted treatment, and so it's for parolees getting out that have heroin problems. So they put me on Subutex, and which is basically the same thing as Suboxone, and it really messed me up, and, like, you know, and I was going to groups and stuff, and I'd be nodding out, and for a while I was like, oh, this is really great, you know, you know, this is good, but still it wasn't enough. I would still use, like, wouldn't take them that morning, and I would, do heroin for a couple of days and then get back on them so I wouldn't go through withdrawals, and carry around fake pee with me everywhere I went. So it wouldn't work. It was just another cover up, and I would still escape to my drug of choice, heroin. But every time I did, like, I would hate it. I started
So you
hating
just kind
it more
of
and more.
just skirted the system a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because it happens a lot too, actually, and it's not uncommon at all, especially with Suboxone when you get the films. Like, they're so easily diverted. Like, a lot of people just kind of save them up until they're ready to go through withdrawal or they can't get anymore, and then use them then or whatever. And that's super common. I think that's what's cool about, like, the new Subuclate. Yeah, it's like that once a month shot. So now right out, like, in the same thing, like parolees and things like that, I don't know if they can get them here yet. I think in some states you can, like when you're out, it's a once a month kind of good and go and just your cravings, and then versus like actually having something that you can rely on just to not go through withdrawal. Because you feel like that perpetuated you a little bit, like kind of just pushed you forward. Like so let me rephrase my question. Do you feel as if like you would have had something like that was like once a month versus like, oh, here's some this, you know what I mean, that you couldn't have used later, that might actually help? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. There was this other shot that's like every 6 months, or this little thing that they put into your arm. And I was thinking about doing that, because like I didn't like how I was taking the pill every morning. I was taking 16 milligrams every morning, dissolving under my tongue, and it was a lot. In order to get the thing in my arm, the little implant that releases slowly, I had to get down to, I think it was 8 milligrams a day, and I was doing 16, and I would start to drop down, and then I'm like, nope, don't want to do it, and I'd go back up, and it was just a constant battle in my head of whether I actually wanted to get off Subutex or just stay on them. I eventually quit using on the weekends or, every now and then, and just stayed on just a Subutex.
Right.
But it was still giving me that relief, like, to where I didn't have to feel everything, I was still covering up what was inside of me.
Yeah.
And
so more than anything, you still, like, just weren't ready to feel your feelings still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially shame, guilt, those drive me to using.
Yeah, what was that experience like? You said that you started to hate it. You started to hate the fact that you still wanted to and that you were still doing it, but it almost becomes a kind of a self-containing loop, of all that guilt and shame, wanting to escape from that. So what point does it break down and you kind of break the cycle?
After parole, I got arrested in Reno, Nevada, and that's where I got arrested before I went to prison in that state, just a year and a half prior. And I was sitting in jail, and my cellie was like, oh, I forgot a Bible. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he's like, I'll just get one tomorrow. I'm like, good talk. And next day I'm out there in the mod, and I see a Bible on the bookshelf, and I grab it for him, and take it into the cell. When we had the lockdown, I'm like, hey, I got you a Bible. He's like, I already got one. And I seen that he already had one. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so I set it down by my bed, and later that night I started reading. I read in James, and some 1 James verse 2, it says something along the lines of count it as blessings and count it as joy when you go through trials. And like that's like my whole life, like I've gone through a lot, and I know like my purpose is to help other people. My purpose is to show love to those who can't love themselves, because that was me for so long. I couldn't love myself. I was hurt. I was lost. And at that point in my cell, I all of a sudden I got hope. And I knew that all the prayers that people were praying for me weren't for nothing. Like I'm alive for a reason. I felt like many times I should have died, but because of people loving me and praying for me, I am still alive. And so I asked God, I was like, God, you have to use me if I'm going to do this. Like, you have to help me help other people and show me how to do that. Give me a heart of your heart. Show me how to love how you love. And I surrendered right there. And I knew when I got out, like, if I just walked out and went back into Reno, on the streets or living in some trap house or living with some girl that eventually I would start to use again. And I was like, I got to have a plan. And I asked my family for help. Not everybody can get help from their family. And my family is sick and tired of me, going back and forth for the longest time and not staying clean, and so they were a little reluctant at first, but once I started talking to them and telling them like how I feel and stuff and what I want to do, they helped me get a ticket back here to Alaska, and I wanted to get into a program, so I looked into the Wasilla Teen Challenge program, and I sent an application to them, and then I sent an application to the Men's Freedom House program, which I heard about years ago before they even started, through this family friend of mine that she actually like wakes up in the middle of the night thinking about me and prays for me. And so I moved here. As soon as I walked out of jail, I had my aunt pick me up she lives in California. She picked me up and she drove me to the airport. Because I didn't even want to walk to the airport myself. I knew I could make it to the airport. I knew that I would have strength enough to not pick up from jail to the airport, but I wanted to make sure that I got there. Because my family is helping me again, and I don't want anything to happen, to where I burn another bridge, like I've burnt so many bridges, and I've said I was going to change so many times, but I never fully surrendered to God's plans for my life. I never fully surrendered to his love and fully accepting Jesus into my life and trying to live more like Jesus. I mean, that's what our purpose here. It's to love how Jesus loves. And love is so very much important. So important in this recovery community. People they come in broke, lost, and hopeless. But if you just show them a little bit of love, like something that makes them feel comfortable and wanted, and they know that that they can have that feeling here with a recovery support group, or in a church, or at meetings, like you find this love in different places, but it's our job to take that love that we find in these places and carry it with us throughout the day and to love on other people.
Yeah, it reminds me of earlier you mentioning the ideal friend. What would have really helped you, and it sounds like you're trying to become that person. Like that's your ultimate goal, is to be the kind of person that can show some real care, that can relate to some real struggles. And even though you've had this really difficult journey, you are in such an awesome, opportune slot to be able to share from a place of experience and from a place of you've been these different places. So I just think it's awesome that you're willing to, I know you said like the whole podcast thing is a little uncomfortable, but you're willing to count even this amount of suffering as gain, as you mentioned, in order to further that idea of wanting to be there for other people, kind of wanting to serve. That's something we keep coming back to in these podcasts that I find really fascinating, is that there's so much healing in helping others. There's so much healing in giving back to other people. And it's not something that you think. Like, my selfish nature isn't thinking about how awesome it is to help out other people, but it's even rewarding in its own way of when you really impact someone for good is one of the coolest feelings ever, in my opinion. So it's just so crazy to see where you've come from and being able to switch it around and actually try to become that ideal person. in someone else's life. So, man, just so awesome to hear that kind of story.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now that you're in recovery, and you've been, I'm assuming throughout this process, you've been in a number of meetings outside of here and just kind of throughout, you know what I mean, and kind of engaged in the 12-step process and maybe some other processes as well. So what skills have you learned to better help like feel your feelings now and kind of express those in a more healthy way?
I mean, just being open and being able to identify like how I am feeling, and I mean through prayer, honestly, and just giving those bad feelings to God, and even the good feelings too, and he turns them around and even makes them even better. So I mean that personal relationship with God, that constant communion. And in meetings are awesome. Like I mean some of them I don't really like, and I ask myself like why am I in this meeting? But something told me like look, it's not always about you. You know, like everybody needs each other. And I can choose to take what I want from a meeting. There is a lot of good, and then there's some icky stuff. Well, I can leave that icky stuff. I don't have to accept everything, you know, that somebody tells me. And, you know, even outside of a meeting, someone, you know, you're talking to in a church or on the street or, you know, anywhere, you don't have to accept everything, but you can still love them for who they are, because we're all human. We all make mistakes. Like, you know, I'll say something and I'll be like, oh, that probably might have hurt them a little bit, and like, you know, not really realizing what I'm saying at the moment because we respond quickly, you know. So like I'm trying to be, you know, like quicker to listen and, you know, slower to speak, and it's hard. Like our human nature is just to, you know, to respond quick and, you know, get things done, and you know, who cares if it hurts anybody? That's their problem. It's not my problem. But I mean, we are all responsible for what we say. Words are powerful. You know, we can speak life, we can speak death. Like words can hurt somebody. Words can drive somebody, you know, from a school to go home and ponder, you know, whether if they're worthy enough to live a life. And it's sad, you know. Like I think we need to tell, you know, more of the younger generation what words can do to people, and you know, to show every kid love, because a lot of it might be they might not get that full love from home, and they go to school and they take it out on other kids. And not everyone knows what to say or how to talk about, you know, that pain that they might feel from someone else, because they're taking it out on them because they don't get the full amount of love at home, and nobody knows what that kid's home life is like. And so there is no help in that. So even just like having, you know, some safe adults to confide in, or you know, like just like maybe I don't know, you know.
Right.
Like,
yeah. No. That's
You're completely right
you're
with that
there,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even our sources of strength training we went to, they mentioned that having one trustable adult in your life makes a huge impact. And I know personally, I did have that. I did have someone besides my parents, who was actually my pastor at the time, who I met when I was around 13, who kind of helped me. You know, I could really express myself without being worried about being punished, and it was really helpful to me in some tumultuous years in my life. But yeah, absolutely. I think you're right as far as how that can help, because absolutely. I was really curious about, you know, you said you had a lot of background anger. Now, working through that, was that a slow process, or did that happen at a specific point where it just kind of dropped? Was that like a revelation, or was it kind of a slow burn? You know, it faded away as you matured and kind of became more capable of dealing with your emotions and kind of what life throws at you.
It was a slow process.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people, some things are quick for them,
Mm-hmm.
and some things are slow. Like for me, the anger thing, something I held on to since I was a kid, it was hard to let go because I was comfortable with it. And so I just couldn't just turn away from it. And like I really had to figure out like how I can put that energy I was putting into being angry into something productive. Like for a long time I was really into working out, and like when I would feel angry, like through like maybe I felt like disrespected or hurt, and I would go to the gym, and I could get rid of that. I was a runner. I would run miles, and I would feel so good afterwards, and so everything that was building up throughout the week, I could get it out through that way. But I mean, that was just another like cover up. It's a great coping skill, but I was still like, I would still have those feelings build up throughout the week. So what I came to realize is like, if I feel disrespect, if someone says something that hurts me, or if I don't have those connections to people around me, well, me not having those connections to people around me is because I was isolating. I was nervous, and I wasn't open with people, and I'm like, maybe other people don't feel like how I feel. Just coming to the realization that everyone struggles, whether they put on a front or not. Like, they might have a smile on their face, but they too also struggle with the same things. Like, we're all human. Of course, we're different, but there are these thoughts in our head that are just saying, you're not worthy, you're not loved, that person's just being fake. And those ate at me for a long time. Like, I'm not worthy of a good life because of my past, the shame I feel, the guilt I feel from the things that I've done. Like, it ate at me for a long time. But by accepting what Jesus did on the cross for me, like, I don't have to feel those things. Like, I am free today. Like, I have peace. I have joy. I have love. And the past, it does not matter. That old me is dead. And that anger that I was constantly dealing with, that anger is dead to me. Like, I let that go too. I put that on the cross. And Jesus took that from me. I mean, today, like, if I might have like a thought of like, oh, I should be angry at this person, right? But that's not who I am today. I can rebuke those thoughts because those thoughts aren't from me, because I am a new creation. And it saved my life. And so just by having all those people that have been praying for me, those people that have been loving on me when I couldn't love myself, is the only reason why I'm here today. And I had to take those steps to be okay with myself so I can continue being okay, or being here today, Mm-hmm. Like nobody can accept God's love for me but myself. Like, I had to take that step of faith. I had to reach out. I had to ask for it. I had to choose for myself to be forgiven. Like, I can't choose for you so you don't have to feel all that pain of your past. I can't choose that for you. I wish I could. Like, I had to do that for myself.
Yeah, and I hope that people who are in addiction, when they begin recovery, that their support groups, whether it be family, friends, are kind of able to draw that distinct line to realize that this is a new life that we're embarking on, and not to keep the old life there, because you already feel, whoever it is already feels bad about it, about
Mm-hmm.
the things that have happened. There's a lot of shame and guilt. You didn't want to be where you were. You did it because of what you thought you needed, which was basically escape, you know. But you didn't want to hurt people. Like, that wasn't your goal, you know, more or less. But regardless, people got hurt, and to have a support group or people that you trust, to have them be willing to forgive you for what happened in the past, I think that can really help people in recovery to kind of start that new life with more acceptance, having people willing to kind of forget that past and accept you as a new person. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Thank you, Clay. This was fun, man. I mean, I'm glad today we focused a lot on recovery, actually, because I think there was a lot of good stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, like, empowering for a lot of people. I think what's really to be taken from this is that, like, no matter how many times it takes, you know, just keep pushing.
Yes.
Like, just keep going, you know, like, things are going to happen, and, like, it's not going to be perfect every time. It's going to be a struggle, and, you know, getting sober's hard, man. Like, it's worth it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a huge, awesome step. Like Clay said, he's free today. He feels his feelings today. He does things today that he never thought he'd probably be alive to do 5-10 years ago. But it is going to be a hard process, but it's going to be a worth it process. But at the end of the day, like, you're right, it's a process. It's not a one-time fix-all thing. It's not show up and be better, you know. But to start the process, you got to take that step forward.
And especially getting into recovery where people want you to win, where they want you to succeed, kind of having that support group. I know you mentioned there were people who were kind of in your corner. At least they were willing, they said basically, we're ready to accept you. Just please come back to being yourself again. Mm-hmm. So I think using services like the Serenity House or places like that can kind of give you maybe a little extra push, seeing someone else wanting you to succeed as badly as maybe you do. Maybe, like you said, there's a certain point where you just hate it, but you're still in it. So people who are in that place, there's people who want you to win out there. There's people who can help support you to get you to the right resources that may make this a lot easier. I mean, I know it's really traditional to want to do everything on your own, and, you know, even as you mentioned earlier, kind of that self-empowerment of, oh, I can be a god here, I can control all the things in my life. That just doesn't work. It just really breaks down. So being willing to kind of humble yourself and reach out to the people who really care about you, I think is a huge step in the direction of recovery. Yeah.
Clay, thanks for hanging out with us today, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I
this was
appreciate
you and I
you
for
guys.
the Kenai.